Plug in.
Website
TNTRadio.live.
Check it out.
Today's News Talk Radio.
It's the coolest.
TNT.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We're still in the second hour here of this live broadcast. We'll be shifting right now our focus away from the Middle East. I want to talk about the other major theater of concern, that is what's happening in Ukraine. NATO's proxy war against Russia continues with a disturbing pattern of escalation coming from the West. We're talking about the Americans and the British leading the calls, the clarion calls to escalate the conflict here. I'm going to point to an incredible op-ed by one of my favorite writers, Tariq Cyril Amar, who's also very active on Twitter. We spoke to him last week on the program, and the headline really says it all. Betting on Armageddon. What is Zelensky's plan now that his term is over? Legitimate or not, the Ukrainian leader is a national catastrophe hell-bent on going global. Important question, not even a rhetorical question. This is a practical question, a practical concern here. It does appear, and many commentators would agree, possibly including our next guest, we'll find out in a moment, that Ukraine is doing its best. Willfully, Washington's going along with this gambit, but doing its best to drag Washington and NATO into a confrontation with Russia, perhaps to save the regime in Kiev. Has it come to that? Are things that short-sighted? I don't know. We need to kind of discuss this. Our next guest is a political commentator. His website, the ANC Report. Ryan Dawson joining us right now from the Far East. Ryan, how are you?
I'm pretty good. Thanks for having me on.
Appreciate you joining us, Ryan. And I don't know if you're as concerned about the kind of escalation. Just when I thought, Ryan, and we're looking at this, the battlefield situation in Ukraine, I mean, it's pretty safe to say Russia is defeating the Ukrainian armed forces, who are being fully backed by NATO, defeating them handedly. It's not going well for Ukraine, nor for NATO. You'd think at this point, Ryan, that it would be the come to Jesus moment for the West. Zelensky's handlers would read the writing on the wall. Instead, it feels like, Ryan, they're doubling down. And I'm trying to work out, is this just rhetoric, or do people in the West, or Zelensky included, are they really flirting with Armageddon here? Is this somehow the calculus? I don't know. I'm trying to figure this out, and I know you've looked at this and other conflicts very closely. I want to get your thoughts, your assessment on this very odd situation that we find ourselves in.
It won't be Armageddon, but it seems like they don't know what else to do. Ukraine needs to surrender. They're out of personnel. Russia owns the skies. Ukraine is out of 155 millimeter artillery, and their drones are being countered by these turtle tanks, which would not have worked in the beginning of the war, but it's a niche thing for a niche situation. But the U.S. and NATO are doubling down because they don't know what else to do. Why did they stay? Why did America stay in Afghanistan for 20 years with no real progress? And they ended up leaving and left about $85 billion worth of equipment for the Taliban. The military-industrial complex is not working on behalf of national interests or any of the propaganda they pontificate. They're there for profiteering. And that's going really well. And so if you forget about national interests and you look at it how it actually is for select commercial interests, the war is going fine for NATO, because that's the whole purpose. They don't care about Ukraine, and they don't care about Russia. They don't care how many of these people die. It's not them. They're making lots of money.
And is this a case where they're banking on the fact, Ryan, that Russia's basically said, you put NATO troops on the ground in Ukraine, or you fire with these weapons like Storm Shadow missiles, for instance, off of F-16s or whatever into Russia, and all the American politicians right now are crowing, we need to hit targets in Russia. We need to arm Ukraine to hit targets in Russia. It's almost like a kind of chorus of a provocation, Ryan. It is the strangest thing, because Russia has said that they will respond in kind. Do people in the West, these political leaders, do they really understand what Russia means? Or do they just think that Russia's bluffing, and that they can carry on this escalation ladder to do what you just described, Ryan, which is to keep the business going? and to keep growing the business of the military-industrial complex. Do they really think that Putin is going to come good on these threats?
Well, Putin doesn't bluff. They've been attacking Russia, though, but by Russia, mostly they mean Crimea, which the US and NATO don't consider part of Russia, but it is part of Russia. It's historically part of Russia all the way up until the 1950s, and then it rejoined Russia through secession in 2014. But they've been doing that mostly against Russian naval bases, but now it's a little different now. They're just, well, they did also blow up a civilian bridge, or tried to. They knocked out half of it, the Kerch Bridge to Crimea. But they now are just firing in the middle of civilian centers and city centers. They're doing that in Belgrade too, in the north of Kiev or Kharkiv. So it is a bit different. Now they have attacked Moscow in the past too with drones. And then there was a terrorist attack that the world or the US blamed on ISIS-K, but Russia, who actually had the terrorists interrogated them, said, no, this is a proxy terrorist attack from Ukraine. So there have been attacks inside of Russia proper. Of course, it's a war, and Russia is attacking inside of Ukraine. I don't know why they can say, well, you can't attack us. Well, they can. What's the nasty about it is they're just attacking civilian cities. That's the problem with it. Hitting a naval base in Crimea is fair play. You're at war. Yeah, too bad. Storm shadows are not. I mean, that is what it is. They're hitting Odessa too. So, but they haven't hit inside of NATO. That's the problem. Is NATO keeps arming Ukraine with storm shadows and ATACMS and HIMARS and things that can reach inside Russia and hit civilians. And they've been hitting civilians in the Donbass too. Russia hasn't been able to take out any manufacturing or facility or transport of these weapons inside of Poland or inside of Georgia, who's not in NATO, so they could do that, or Romania. But they could change their minds about that. If a civilian target really gets tagged and there's a high death count, then you could see the war expanding. That is the danger here. You know, Georgia could find itself getting smacked again. But Romania, Poland has sent a lot of troops to Ukraine too. Russia has withheld hitting NATO territory so they don't trigger Article 5. But, you know, I don't think Turkey's really on board. They're in NATO on paper, but without that, the rest of NATO, bring it. I mean, Russia can win that war whether they join or not. And so I think NATO is taking this gamble, and they're looking at the field, whether it's, you know, the risk is worth taking or not. And there really isn't enough Ukrainian personnel to combine with. And NATO just doesn't have the stomach or the soldiers for it, or the political willpower from their public to join in a ground war in Russia. America's not going to put boots on the ground. They're not going to send their Air Force. They're just going to use Ukrainian proxies and whatever mercenaries they can muster. But that's how it's been since the beginning, and they're about out of those. And so there isn't anything Ukraine can do other than surrender while they still have a little bit of leverage. But Zelensky's not interested in that. And the corruption in Ukraine is so bad that less than 3 or 4 brigades got all the way to Kharkiv's door, because even though the money had been spent and they claimed they used it on fortification and landmines, and none of it was done. The money disappeared. Where did it go? Probably up Zelensky's nose. But these oligarchs took these billions of dollars that were supposed to go into fortification and bunkers, and they spent it on who knows what, but it wasn't on that, because Russia just marched right on in, and there were no defenses prepared at all. There were some old trenches and things. And so the Ukrainian army, which has been very tough, had to retreat. They weren't overwhelmed. It wasn't overwhelming numbers or anything. They just didn't have anything, any defense or bulwark there. And so that's what you're seeing happen to the money. It's going to, you know, to real estate and stuff for Ukrainian oligarchs. They're spending it on villas all over the world. They're not doing it on defense. And that's what lets you know they know this war is done, and they're not interested in spending that money on trying to win or trying to drag out some war of attrition or any sort of victory, a Pyrrhic victory for Russia, even. They're just spending it on themselves. And that's very typical Ukraine. The leadership there has a complete disconnect from the people they're pressing into service, which is including women and old men at this point.
Oh, and on that front, we have a clip here we want to play of one of Zelensky's press gangs going after somebody, military recruiters out with the help of law enforcement there. I think we've got the clip. Go ahead and roll this. If producer, if you've got that second Ukraine clip. Yeah, here it is, Ryan. You've probably seen this scene many times. There's a lot of these films circulating online. I mean, brutal. In some cases, Ryan, I've seen the family trying to tackle the Ukrainian military recruiters, say, don't take my husband away. He's the only one who's working, getting food for the family, that sort of thing. And even going, Ryan, for older men, like up to the age of 60, old enough to be grandparents. I mean, are they that desperate to get warm bodies out to the trenches at this point?
Yeah, or is it worse? I mean, are they looking to get rid of these people so they no longer have to pay their pensions, or they're just get cut in costs? Who knows? Because it's almost genocidal at this point. Saying if you're losing a war so bad that you have to push 60-year-old men into the trenches, what are you doing? Are you trying to wipe out your own population? You've basically slaughtered 500,000 men, and the rest have fled. You've destroyed your country, and you're going to destroy any future of Ukraine because there's a whole generation missing. And a lot of the women are fleeing and leaving too. I mean, they're there and they're working, but that's only half the population. And then a lot have left. A lot are escaping for foreign capital, but their entire infrastructure, their civil infrastructure, is paid for essentially by the United States. You could say NATO, but it's really the United States is paying for everything. So their economy would have broken a couple of weeks into the war if not for money from America. The war would have been over. The death count would have been far less. As bad as it would have been over. But they've been able to pay them. They've been able to pay their salaries and pay the soldiers' salaries. So they've dragged this out, and they keep fighting tooth and nail. But you're fighting Russia, which is 150 million people. The writing was on the war. The writing was on the wall at the very beginning of the war. It's just sad to see. And now, pregnant women have been found on the front line. It's just a complete slaughter at this point. They're retreating or surrendering on the first shot in some parts of the front line. They don't have enough personnel to man the entire frontier. And so they're getting rolled over. And Russia, on the other hand, is the opposite. They're getting volunteers, more and more people joining and signing up. They have overwhelming air power, overwhelming artillery, and now they outnumber them with infantry. And they found a counter to the drones. So it's over for Ukraine. They're going to continue to lose territory. And it's as if these oligarchs don't care. They just want to kill as many Russians and Ukrainians as possible, because to them, it's not their people. They don't care how many of them die. They'll make money and flee the country at the last second. And that'll be that. And Russia will end up with more territory, and they'll just think, well, we killed some of them and we killed Ukrainians. It's a win-win for them. It doesn't matter how many Ukrainian Eastern Orthodox Christians die. They're not concerned about them. They want to wipe out the generation above and below them. Unbelievable. And the women are a lot of them who have left are never coming back. They're in the UK, they're in other parts of Europe, they're in NATO countries. They took those immigrants in, and that's putting pressure on those places too. All these refugees have been created. There's nothing good to come of this war, and there's nothing good to come of stretching it out other than profits for Lockheed Martin and Raytheon and the companies involved who have been doing this.
We saw a similar thing with Iraq, Ryan. Remember the stories of pallets with shrink wrapped cash showing up off C-130s in Baghdad, paying off. It was supposedly to pay off everybody. It
People
bred
playing soccer with balls of cash. Yeah.
you're right. It bred corruption on a scale, and a lot of people say that Iraq hasn't really recovered from that period. And when you talk about American money, which you just mentioned, when you're injecting, tens of billions of dollars to subsidize a state, this is only going to breed corruption. How could it be any other way? And then what do you do when the war's over? That culture is still going to be there. And
especially a state that was
ahead.
that corrupt to begin with. I mean, it's run by oligarchs to say, well, Zelensky's term is over. He's been a dictator anyway. He's not, he just didn't hold elections. And then he ran out the maximum days of his term. It doesn't matter to him. He was a Kolomoisky goon from the beginning. The way Ukraine operates is these families of oligarchs who benefit from foreign aid just set themselves up as an ownership class, because if somebody's going to give you billions of dollars, it's very easy to take that aid and buy up functional industries and then just collect as the owner. You didn't have to put any work in. You didn't have to, there was no creativity. There's no entrepreneurship on your side. You just bought things other people made, and now you own it. And now you have all the revenue, and they get monopolies. And then a lot of it, they recycle back, like we saw with FTX, ultimately back to Democrat politicians who are just using Ukraine as a conduit to pay themselves. It's very similar to what AIPAC does with Congress. They bribe the politicians, and then they send more billions of dollars in aid to Israel, and then Israel uses that to set up a donorship class, and the donor class sets up an ownership class within the US and Canada and run the governments. I mean, if you have to cut off foreign aid, or you're subsidizing your own subversion.
That's a good way of putting it, actually. And this is a big problem in Canada, by the way. The Ukrainian lobby and Ukrainian expatriate community in Canada is huge, and it is by far the strongest lobby there. No surprise you have a Waffen SS officer getting a standing ovation in the Canadian Parliament last fall.
Yeah.
I mean, the Zelensky and Trudeau's midnight Nuremberg rally there in Ottawa. I got a clip here, Ryan, I want to get your reaction to. This is the former British Prime Minister, Boris Johnson. This clip just surfaced. I can't think of a more embarrassing thing to be circulating online for Britain. Boris Johnson is an embarrassment on a good day, but this just takes the biscuit. Let's go ahead and roll this. I want to get your reaction.
My message to you is very simple. Thank you to the heroes from the Azov Brigade who warned us about their presence tonight. Give the Ukrainians what they need. Give them the weapons. Give them the authorization to use those weapons outside their own borders if necessary. Now, absolutely ludicrous that Ukrainians should be forbidden from doing what Putin is doing himself and attacking Ukrainian forces. Why on earth shouldn't Ukrainians be able to attack Russian forces mustering on their borders? Give them those weapons, give them the attackers, give them the budget, give them the air defences that they need. It's the single best investment that we can make in the defence of the whole Euro-Atlantic area, is supporting Ukrainian heroes. We rely wholly on heroes such as the people who are here tonight with us from the Azov Brigade.
That last sentence sealed it. The heroes from Azov. There you go. I wonder who wrote that for him. Maybe they don't have air defense to give them. That they don't have the ammunition to give them. They do have ATACMS and things like that. They have some artillery that they can give, and some ballistic missiles they could give, but there's really nothing inside Russia they can destroy. The military base somewhere in Sevastopol or whatever, they need ammo, they need air defense, and they need aircraft. They don't have it, and they don't have the pilots that can use the kind of things like F-16s, F-15s. They wouldn't know how to do it anyway. And Russia would quickly shoot those down. I mean, they have overwhelming air defense superiority and air superiority. So he can talk all he wants, but they really don't have the manufacturing capacity for the 155s, which is what they desperately need to take out some of these tanks. They don't have enough minesweepers. I mean, they're lacking in a lot of departments. And mostly, they don't have enough personnel. And that takes 17 to 18 years to grow a baby into a man and put him in a trench. They've run out of fighters. And that's been Russia's tactic the whole time. They knew that NATO would give them almost endless supply of money. That's why you don't see Russia running around taking over the cities. What's the point? Usually in war, if you take over a city, then you deprive the other side of the resources from that city, to making bullets and factories and all. Well, none of their gear comes from their own cities. It's all coming from America and NATO, the rest of NATO. So that is a moot point. You can't really deprive them of the economic centers that cities provide either, because again, that's all coming from abroad also. So the only way to win is to wipe out the other side's military. You need to do that. If you can't wipe out the weapons or the money, there's two ways. You can either starve them or you can shoot them all, get rid of the personnel. And Russia's decided to get rid of the personnel rather than just bombing all the agriculture. They're not Israel. They're not just going to carpet bomb cities. That would make the war a lot faster, but it's also immoral and insane. And you do have to live with these people after the war is over. So they have restrained from just leveling Kiev, which they could do with hypersonic missiles just all day long. There's no defense for it. They've hit military centers and they're wiping out their army. It's sad to see at this point. War is always awful, but it's so lopsided to this point that you're just saying, please quit, please stop. This is such a waste of life. You're going to lose anyway. Do it through negotiation. Don't wait till the last Ukrainian. That is not heroic. It's just dumb, and it's immoral. But Boris Johnson doesn't care. He'll give the speech. Let's get in aircraft. That sounds expensive. Let's send in whatever we have left of our air defense systems. Patriot 3, I mean, how well did that do? I think the first one got tagged on the first day. And what's funny is all this ammo they said they didn't have, they did have, because they sent it to the Israelis. They're just not willing to give up what they have left. Israel will always be number one when it comes to getting money, cash, or whatever they need. So they refilled the Iron Dome. They scrambled around. They got things outside of NATO for that. And they did buy some artillery from South Korea. Well, South Korea wouldn't sell it to Ukraine, but they sold it to Poland, and it ended up in Ukraine. And in turn, what did they get for that? Russia turned around and bought 1 million rounds from North Korea that they didn't need. It was just a way of saying, oh, we can play this game. Now North Korea's got what they needed the most, cash. So
Yep.
That, I think right there, South Korea wised up, and Japan got on their case about it too, saying, let's just sit this out. Like, don't get involved. And the way they're hyping things up with Taiwan, Asia could have its own problems. And that would be, if you think this war is bad, poke the panda bear. Yeah, let's see what happens. Let's try to avoid this. We don't need a war over Taiwan. If the US stays out of Taiwan, China will stay out of Taiwan. Just don't play with that. But the Pelosi's of the world, the insider traders in Congress, they don't care. They'll watch the world burn because they think, well, it won't be me. It'll just be over there in Asia. It'll be over there in Europe. It'll be over there in the Middle East. And the economic effects from that won't be them either. They've been a little bubble. They're invested in the same companies that are giving government contracts to. The whole thing's rigged. I mean, Wall Street is completely rigged on that level for profiteering. And we don't have anybody to prosecute this stuff. It is obvious that the Pelosi's of the world engage in insider trading. That is obvious. It's almost all of Congress. No one's there to clean up the swamp, and no one's coming. Trump's not going to do it either. I wish we could have a Rand Paul or Thomas Massey or somebody that would go after that, go after Big Pharma, go after all this corruption in the United States, because that would end it all. If you cut off American foreign aid, there wouldn't be a war in Ukraine. There never would have been a coup in Ukraine in the first place. Israel would not be able to attack all its neighbors and annex land from Palestine. We wouldn't have all these silly global sanctions on Iran, from Iran to Venezuela. Like, oil could be cheap, standard of living would rise. It would be good for all. But we've got a system set up by a bunch of warmongering pedophiles who are completely compromised, that are not interested in going after corruption whatsoever. They won't even close their own border. We've got states that won't even prosecute theft. They just go steal $950 worth of stuff, no big deal. They got so desperate under Trump that there was a virus released from a lab, and they allowed race riots where the police were told to take a knee, just let a mob go around burning things. That's how little they care about you. That's how much they care about their own power, and just using the government like a giant ATM machine to withdraw your money for themselves, or just to digitize it into existence through the Federal Reserve. There's so many things that need to be cleaned up. And I'm excited that some of this will start to change as they lose a monopoly on media. We have shows like this that can go on X, that can go on Rumble, that can go on Substack, where people can finally see it. And it's, journalists like the Glenn Greenwalds and the Cy Hirsches and things that don't have to go through the avenues of televised filtered media anymore. And the public is seeing what's going on in Palestine. They're seeing what's happening in Donbass for the first time. They're going to see that what happened in Yemen, what's happening in Sudan, because there's finally a place for them to do it. Mass media didn't talk about Yemen for over a year. That was NBC for a year. Why, during the worst of it. That's what people need to realize. This matrix, this system, this facade, they don't loudly announce their losses, but they're having losses. There is nothing they can do to turn things around in Ukraine, other than, if they really want to hit the beehive, is starting World War III, either using nukes or sending in hordes of foreign troops, which France is flirting with their Foreign Legion. Yeah, but that still won't turn it around. That'll make it a lot worse, and that'll make it last a lot longer. But ultimately, they do not have a way to win militarily short of ICBMs. And if that happens, we all lose.
Yeah, all bets are off at that point anyway. So, I mean, if you really want to go that far down the rabbit hole, there's really no point. You
They'll
might
lose
as well,
that too. Russia has more of those as well. I mean,
unless you think you have enough money to buy a private island and fortify yourself with your own little mini nuclear reactor like Bill Gates is developing at the moment. But you're right about the problems at home, Ryan. I was in DuPont Circle in DC not so long ago, and I walked into CVS Pharmacy, and I saw a gang of youths come in, and they just marched in, emptied the shelves, and filmed everything, and filmed themselves being filmed by the staff, laughing at them, and then posted it on social media.
Oh, they can monetize that on Kick, because Kick is a platform that will finance nuisance streamers. Just go in and break the law and film yourself. They're so hungry for clickbait that they're like, go assault somebody, go rob a store, go do a Johnny Somali type of thing and film it. And they'll put it there. It's run by gamblers. It's set up by online gamblers, and they have just made being an ass clown a career. So you just go around and do stuff like that and pull stunts, and it's going to get people killed. I mean, it's going to be the old F around, find out situation where they do it. And there's stores in DC that, first of all, they've gone cashless. You can only use a card, and they have to have all the stuff behind plexiglass with the key, because theft is so bad that you can't just have things on the shelf, or what you saw would happen. What has happened to our youth? They're like, why would you go in and just steal things from a store? That store is going to close. That's what happened to Walgreens. They closed down 17 stores in San Francisco because of theft.
Yeah,
There's
they
so
can't
much
serve that
theft and
market.
employee theft too. That's why they got rid of cash. It's not some conspiracy. It's just employees will steal the money. And if you have cash there, the youth will come and take that too. Like, give me all the money in the register. So they had to go to a card system. Nothing is being done about theft, and stores are closing down. Now, who does that benefit?
Mm.
If you get rid of brick and mortar, where do people have to get their goods? It's going to be the Amazons and Alibabas and the ones that mail it to your doorstep. And the theft's so bad there too that they're having to
Yeah.
make these contraptions so you don't have people stealing packages off your porch. It's it's just going to get worse. I mean, there's a way to do it, and El Salvador showed us. Arrest the criminals and don't let them out the next day.
Yeah.
It only takes like 1% of the population to mess everything up for everyone else up. But it almost, well, let's get rid of almost. It is by design. There is no way that they don't know about the theft, about the open borders, about all these obvious crimes. They don't care. They need the middle class focused on the class below them so they never threaten the hegemony of the one above them. And so the class war is created on purpose. They'll allow a criminal class to keep you scared to death, sit in your house, buy the drugs, order from Amazon. That's what they want. A little bit of fear, and then throw in some stories about how the ice is melting and there might be another super virus or whatever to scare you. Just stay inside and order everything, consume, get fat, get hooked on more drugs, take more pills. They want you dumb and apathetic and broken, because dumb, apathetic people police themselves and each other. And that's the only way they can control you, is to get you to police each other. And they can't get you to do that without breaking you down psychologically, by just inundating you with fear and allowing a small criminal class to run around and do whatever it wants, just like DC. As above, so below.
Yeah, and the other sad part about that, Ryan, is, and if you travel around the world, which you've traveled to different countries, you know that the value of having a high street or main street with shops, with a community, interacting with people, being able to go look, talk, maybe discuss, come back and look again, all the interactions, that's all gone in that
It's socially
Bezos
healthy.
economy.
Yeah. Well, we
Yeah.
can't do. We have stores here. We have stores downstairs that are unmanned. You just go in and buy on the honor system. You can buy hard liquor in Korea or Japan. Japan, you can get it out of a vending machine, but it'll just be sitting on the street, and you have to go and take it in the store and scan a thing and buy it. And walk. It's just, they just trust you to do that. You can do stuff like that in East Asia. That wouldn't last a day in DC or San Francisco, Chicago, you name it. It wouldn't last an hour. All of it would be gone the first time the first person saw it. They'd put it all in a pickup truck and leave.
Maybe calling their friends, get down here, get down, free liquor.
Yeah, they're like, what is this? Is this a trap? It would be, the hell, the police would take it. I mean, we don't have a high trust society in the United States, Canada, any of these places. We used to. It used to be, if you rewound even back to the 80s, 70s, I could see that in the certain places in the South, maybe, where they would just do it and you'd pay on your honor. That's gone. That's just like, that's something people wouldn't even believe exists unless they saw it. But if Asia opens its borders, they're going to lose that too, because it just takes a few people. I'm from Hatteras Island. I remember when the time where we all had to start locking doors and locking bikes, because there was one person out there just stealing bicycles and stuff, and it just takes one person. And until that person is caught, it's like, oh, we all have to lock our bikes now because somebody's out here stealing bikes. It ruins it for everyone. And they act like it's some unwinnable thing. Like, oh, we've been fighting the war on drugs. It just can't be won. Oh, we just can't. There's not. It's like, yeah. Have you tried arresting the criminals? Because that works. There is a limited amount of that. They don't care. They'll use it if you're a dissident. They'll trump it up. If they'll criminalize you for telling the truth, they put whistleblowers in jail. If you're an influencer who's trying to clean things up, like the Tate brothers, they'll call you a human trafficker and then throw you in jail. No evidence needed, no trial given. Just go to jail. And worst of all is Julian Assange. There, what is he guilty of? Telling the truth about government corruption? Obvious stuff that's been reported other places. Oh, the U.S. killed civilians in Iraq. Duh. Yeah, of course. I mean, they starved to death 500,000 with those sanctions. That was bad. There's no consequence for that. It really is evil when someone like that or Edward Snowden, who told the truth about the NSA, has to live in exile, and they won't give him a fair trial. And we all know it. What is going on when the whistleblowers and the people telling you to do push-ups or something or go to prison? To anyone trying to fix society and say, get out there and clean up your life, or talking about the, guess what? America is spying on its own civilians. That was true. That's not a conspiracy or something. That's something the NSA has been doing. You go to myself, I've been banned on every social media platform until Elon got Twitter, and now it's renamed to X. Back on that, but can't use Facebook, can't use YouTube, can't use PayPal, can't use Discord. Why? Why? For being an anti-war voice, for telling you, hey, stop shooting kids. How about we don't set the babies on fire like they've been doing to Palestinians? And they've been doing that since way before October 7th. That gets shut down. That lets you know how evil, not just corrupt, but evil our government is. They are on the side of baby killers. Anything to profiteer. It's unbelievable. But you look at who's doing the bribing. Look at that WhatsApp group the Washington Post exposed. It's all these Jewish billionaires who are supremacists, and they think Zionists would be the proper term. It's what they just think God gave their group land and they can just annex territory and take over someone else's living room, shoot the kids, having snipers shooting people in the knee. They don't care. There's no argument you can give and say, well, you did. They know. It's not like they're really that delusional and they think Israel got attacked for no reason and Hamas is a bunch of terrorists. They just say that knowing that isn't true because they want to take their stuff. And we are run by a bunch of thieves. And
these,
there are some
Bill
people
Ackman,
that go ahead.
Bill Ackman, one of those billionaires on that WhatsApp group that the Washington Post exposed, which you just mentioned. That was a kind of a bombshell story because what it shows you is you get billionaire activists who are networked and totally coordinating lots of activity, including pressuring universities to go after student protesters, to you name it. They're imagine a cadre of billionaire activists coordinating things. That is quite significant. They can get a lot done. Actually,
that's the cabal. Like when we talk about the donor class, that's what we're talking about. You have cliques of billionaires. I've got that Epstein map right behind me. I mean, that's what that was. There's over a dozen billionaires on that map caught kitty fiddling. They are co-compromised to keep them in line. They sort of take this girl, and they know they're being filmed and everything. Ackman too is co-conspirator with Jan Koum, is the principal donor to AIPAC super PACs. I know there's an app going around saying, oh, so-and-so got this much money from AIPAC. That's not even 5% of it. Because AIPAC has the AIPAC Pact, and they also have the UDP, which is where the majority of the money goes. Kuhn gave them $5 million. Ackman too gave him $2.5 million. That's where it's at. And we're at a point where, people think AIPAC is a political action committee. It's not. It's the Policy and Affairs Committee. They have PACs. There's the AIPAC PAC, and they've got several other, we call them the Israeli affiliate groups. Grant F. Smith breaks it all down. He's got a book called Big Israel. It's amazing, the network they've created. But essentially, they use these super PACs, with AIPAC being sort of the umbrella lobby. But its brand is so bad that they rename all these things like, oh, United Democracy, this and that. It's sort of like the National Endowment for Democracy being the umbrella NGO for all these warmongering profiteers in Ukraine. That's what's going on in these super PACs. That's the money you have to trace. I'm going to do a space on X about it, giving people names later on this week. That's where the oligarch class is. We know who they are. We know how much they've given, and this is all about to come out. But it took freedom of speech and a place to do that for such journalism to even be worth it, because otherwise you're just yelling into the wind. Now it's worth doing, and it's pressure from that gets stories in the Washington Post, which were shocking. I can't believe they reported on the WhatsApp group, but that ought to scare everybody. That should have been way bigger news than it was. You have a group of billionaires, 150 people, coming together to bribe a mayor in New York, to bribe people to go after these campus protests. This is the donor class. This is who runs Congress. This is the real movers and shakers, what everyone calls the globalist Illuminati, the elite, the deep state, whatever. It's a class of donors, of Zionist billionaires primarily. That's the shadow government.
And when they whistle, the politicians dance and do the jig. And we've seen it, and more than ever, we've seen it in the last year. A lot's been exposed. Hopefully more is going to get exposed. Ryan Dawson, ANC Report. Follow him on X, Twitter. Ryan, appreciate you joining us this week on TNT.
I hear the music, so I'm out. Thank you so much.
Take care, Ryan Dawson. Amazing. And a big thank you to Palestinian activist Hiba Hajj.